The Madrid supermarket at 9 p.m. was nearly deserted when Diego Martinez, a 30-year-old laborer with little Sofia in his arms, reached the checkout with a pack of diapers and €20, counted to the last cent. He had lost his job 3 days prior. His wife had left him 2 months before, and this was his last bill before he'd have to call social services. The 18-month-old girl clutched a stuffed giraffe as she cried from hunger. When the cashier announced the price had risen to €23, Diego felt his world collapse. Behind him, Carmen Ruiz, the CEO of a €200 million company, watched the scene, recognizing in those slumped shoulders the same pain she had felt years before when she was left alone with a young daughter. Without a word, she stepped forward and placed her credit card on the reader. "I'll pay for these." What happened next forever changed both their lives and proved that sometimes miracles happen in supermarket aisles through the kindness of a stranger who sees her own past in the eyes of a desperate father. The Carrefour on Bravo Murillo Street held the quiet atmosphere of 9 p.m. when Diego Martinez entered with Sofia in his arms. The 18-month-old clutched a worn stuffed giraffe, her eyes red from crying from hunger and tiredness. Diego was 30 but looked 10 years older. 3 days earlier, he had lost his job at the factory. 2 months before, his wife had run off with a co-worker, leaving him alone with Sofia and rent to pay. In his pocket was a €20 bill, all he had left after selling the TV, the computer, and the guitar. In the cart was only a pack of diapers. He had skipped meals for 2 days, but Sofia needed those diapers. He couldn't wait until the next day, when he'd have to humble himself and ask social services for help. At the register, the young cashier looked at him sympathetically as she saw the crying child. Diego placed the pack on the conveyor belt and readied his last €20 bill, having calculated the diapers cost €19.50. The price appeared on the screen, €23. Diego stared at the numbers, hoping he'd misread. The cashier confirmed there had been a price increase that day. €3. 3 miserable euros he didn't have, standing between him and being able to change his daughter. He felt the heat of shame rise to his face as people in line behind him began to grow impatient. He stammered that he didn't have enough and started to pick up the diapers from the belt. Sofia cried louder, as if sensing her father's despair. A calm female voice spoke from behind him. Diego turned and saw a woman around 40, elegantly dressed in a gray suit and a cashmere coat. Her brown hair was pulled into a perfect bun, and her eyes held an expression he couldn't decipher. The woman approached the register, offering a gold credit card. Diego protested that he couldn't accept, but she replied firmly that he could and should, for his daughter. The transaction was completed in seconds. The woman asked for nothing in return, didn't want elaborate thanks, she simply paid and headed toward the self-checkout. Diego stood frozen, diapers in hand, with Sofia finally calm, watching the stranger who had just changed his day without even saying her name. 3 days after the supermarket encounter, Diego was walking through central Madrid with Sofia in her stroller, headed to the social services office. He had finally worked up the courage to ask for official help, though the idea deeply humiliated him. Passing a glass skyscraper in the financial district, he noticed a small crowd gathered around the main entrance. Curious voices spoke of a corporate ceremony, an award for CEO of the Year. Diego slowed his pace, distracted by the commotion. That's when he saw her. The same woman who had paid for the diapers 3 nights earlier was emerging from the building, surrounded by journalists and executives. She wore an elegant navy blue dress and smiled politely at reporters' questions. A banner behind her read, Carmen Ruiz, CEO RIS Industries, 200 million annual revenue. Diego was stunned. The woman who had helped him was one of Spain's most powerful business leaders. She had paid €3 for a stranger's diapers, yet she could buy entire supermarkets. Carmen noticed him in the crowd. Their eyes met for a moment, and she gave a slight smile before being ushered by her assistants into a black SUV. That night, in his small apartment in the suburbs, Diego turned on the laptop borrowed from a neighbor and searched for information on Carmen Ruiz. He found a story that moved him deeply. The daughter of a working-class family in Seville, Carmen had lost her parents in a traffic accident at 19. She was left alone to raise her younger sister, working nights at a call center while studying economics during the day. She had built her empire from scratch, selling food products online when e-commerce was still a novelty. In an interview from 2 years prior, Carmen spoke of her difficult childhood, of nights spent crying because she didn't have money to buy milk for her sister, of how those who have succeeded have a duty to reach out to those left behind. Diego closed the laptop with tears in his eyes. This woman hadn't helped a stranger by chance. She had recognized in him the same desperation she had lived through years before. A week later, Diego had found a temporary job as a courier for a delivery company. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy food and diapers without begging. Sofia stayed with Mrs. Martinez, the elderly neighbor who had offered to look after the girl. Fate would have it that one of his deliveries was to the very skyscraper in the financial district, the offices of Ruiz Industries. Diego went up to the 40th floor with his heart pounding, hoping to find Carmen but afraid to disturb her. While handing a package to the receptionist, he mentioned he wanted to leave a thank you note for Dr. Ruiz. Before the receptionist could respond, a familiar voice echoed. Carmen Ruiz was stepping out of the elevator with 2 assistants, but she stopped when she recognized Diego. She wore an impeccable black suit and had the air of someone who handles millions of euros. But in her eyes was the same kindness from that night in the supermarket. After dismissing her assistants, Carmen invited Diego for coffee in the lobby cafe. 5 minutes later they were seated in a minimalist space, surrounded by young people in suits discussing startups and investments. Diego told her everything. The factory that had closed, the wife who had run off, the loneliness, the fear of not being able to raise Sofia alone. He spoke for 20 minutes without interruption, pouring out years of accumulated frustration. Carmen listened silently, nodding occasionally. When Diego finished, she was thoughtful for a few seconds. Then she revealed why she had helped him that night. She had recognized herself from 15 years earlier, when she too was left alone with a child to raise, counting cents and praying they'd be enough for diapers. The difference was, no one had helped her that night. She had had to leave the diapers at the register and go home to her crying sister. Diego looked at her in disbelief, but Carmen explained that success doesn't erase memories of poverty, it only makes them more precious. 15 years earlier, she was a terrified girl who didn't know how to pay the rent. Carmen looked at Diego intently before asking him a personal question. She wanted to know what he did before working at the factory. Diego revealed he had been studying computer science at university but had to drop out when Sofia was born because his wife didn't work. He had skills in programming, databases, and web development. He was good, before life backed him into a corner. Carmen picked up her phone and typed quickly. Her company was looking for junior developers for the IT department. It wasn't an easy job, it required study and constant updating, but it paid much better than deliveries. Diego protested that she couldn't offer him a job like that without really knowing him. Carmen replied that she knew him enough. She had seen how he cared for his daughter, the dignity with which he faced difficulties, and she knew that someone who has experienced true poverty has a motivation others can't understand. She took out a business card and wrote something on the back. The next day at 9 a.m., he was to present himself to Roberto Fernandez, head of the IT department. She wasn't giving him anything. He had to prove he was worthy of the position. Diego took the card with trembling hands, asking why she was doing this. Carmen hesitated. Then she explained that someone has to break the cycle of bad luck. And because her sister had died 3 years earlier in an accident, she was the same age Sofia had been when Carmen was raising her. Maybe by helping him, she was doing what she wished someone had done for her. Then, Diego felt his eyes grow moist and promised he wouldn't let her down. On the back of the card, Carmen had written, "For Sofia, because every child deserves a future. Cr." 6 months later, Diego was sitting at his desk on the 31st floor of Ruiz Industries, watching code scroll across the monitor. He had managed to pass the probation period and was now a permanent member of the development team. His salary allowed him to live decently and save for Sophia's future. The girl attended the corporate daycare Carmen had built for employees with children. Sophia had grown, she was talking and laughing often. The trauma of her mother's abandonment seemed to have faded thanks to her father's care and the calm environment of the daycare. Diego had gone back to studying, taking night courses in advanced programming. Roberto Fernandez, initially skeptical about Carmen's recommendation, now considered him one of the team's most promising developers, appreciating that driven hunger typical of someone who has hit rock bottom and knows the value of climbing back up. That afternoon, the assistant called Diego to say Dr. Ruiz wanted to see him in her office. In 6 months, he had crossed paths with Carmen only a few times in the hallways, always with polite but distant greetings. Carmen's office took up the entire corner of the 42nd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of Madrid. She was on the phone managing what seemed like a €120 million deal when Diego entered. After hanging up, Carmen handed him a folder, explaining she was opening a new business division specializing in social apps. Are you enjoying this story? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's continue with the video. Applications that would help families in difficulty, single parents, people in need of support. She wanted Diego to lead the development team. Diego opened the folder and saw figures he never imagined he could earn. He protested that he had no experience leading a team, but Carmen explained he had the experience that mattered most. He knew what it meant to need help. Looking at the project specifications, Diego saw APIs for finding temporary work, for sharing resources among families, for connecting single parents, for accessing social services more easily. Carmen concluded that every day there were hundreds of Diegos and Sofias out there, and they could make a difference. Diego signed the contract that same day, not just for the incredible salary, but because he had finally found a purpose beyond survival. 2 years after the supermarket encounter, the Ruiz Social Division, led by Diego, had launched 5 apps helping thousands of families in need. Parent Link connected single parents. Quick Work offered flexible temporary jobs. Social Bridge simplified access to social services. Sophia was now 3.5. She attended preschool and spoke perfectly. Every afternoon she ran to her father with a smile that filled Diego's heart with pure joy. They lived in a better apartment with 2 bedrooms and a small garden where Sophia could play. One December afternoon, doing groceries at the same supermarket where it all began, Diego noticed a man around 40 at the register with 2 small children. The man was counting coins with trembling hands, trying to see if he had enough for milk and bread. Diego immediately recognized that silent desperation. He approached without a word and paid for the man's groceries with his credit card. When the man asked why, Diego simply replied that someone had done it for him when he needed it. Walking home, Sophia asked why he had helped that stranger. Diego explained that sometimes in life you meet people who change everything without knowing it, and when you grow up, it becomes your duty to do the same for someone else, as Mrs. Carmen had done for them. The following month, Diego received an invitation to the Ruiz Industries corporate Christmas party. At the end of the evening, while other executives socialized, Carmen approached Diego, who was playing with Sophia in a quiet corner. Carmen revealed that on that day in the supermarket, she had just come from a terrible meeting. She was thinking of quitting everything and retiring. She felt lonely and useless despite the money. Seeing Diego with Sophia, that pure love despite the difficulties, had reminded her why it was worth fighting. He had saved her as much as she had saved him. Sophia ran to Carmen, hugging her with the spontaneity of children, thanking her for helping Daddy. Carmen returned the hug with tears in her eyes, thanking Sophia for making her father the special man he was. That night, looking at the lit-up Madrid skyline, Diego understood that life had a strange way of setting things right. Sometimes a small act of kindness was enough to change 2 destinies. Sometimes miracles came dressed as strangers in supermarkets. The next day, he began working on a new app, Pay It Forward, a system that allowed people to anonymously pay for the groceries of strangers in need. The first investor was Carmen, who put in €1 million with one condition: that every transaction carry the message, "Someone believes in you." But the real revolution began when Diego decided to test the app right there in that supermarket on Bravo Murillo Street. Every evening from 8 to 10, he would position himself discreetly and observe families in difficulty. Through the app, he would anonymously pay for the groceries of single parents with kids, elderly people counting change, students buying only pasta. The first week he helped 12 families, the second 25. The cashiers began to notice a pattern. More and more often, someone was paying for others, always with the same message on the receipt. The phenomenon spread on local social media. The story of the miracle supermarket attracted newspaper attention. An investigation by El País Madrid discovered it had all started with Diego's app, but the movement had already become autonomous. Dozens of well-off people in the neighborhood had started frequenting the supermarket specifically to help strangers. Store employees recounted moving scenes, mothers crying with relief, fathers thanking heaven, children who didn't understand but smiled. Diego was interviewed by El Mundo and told his story without hiding anything. The article went viral, shared hundreds of thousands of times. The Pay It Forward app was downloaded by 2 million people in the first month. Supermarket chains across Spain called to implement the system. But the most emotional moment came 6 months later, when Diego received a letter from Roberto, the man he had helped that December afternoon. Roberto had found a job. He had managed to regain custody of his children after a difficult divorce and now regularly contributed to the app. The letter contained a photo, Roberto with his 2 kids in a park, all 3 smiling. "You saved me that afternoon," Roberto wrote, "but not just financially. You showed me there is still kindness in the world. Since then, I've started to believe in myself and in people again. Now I'm helping others like you helped me." The circle continues. A year after launch, Pay It Forward operated in 2,000 Spanish supermarkets and had generated almost €10 million in anonymous aid. But the numbers that moved Diego most were others: 3,000 children who now ate regularly, 500 families who had avoided eviction, 200 single parents who had regained hope. Ruiz Industries had become a case study in all European business schools, not for record profits, but for demonstrating that a company could be both profitable and social. Carmen was invited to international conferences to explain the Madrid model, how to turn an act of kindness into a movement that changes society. Sofia was now in first grade and often asked her father to take her to the special supermarket where it all started. Diego always obliged, and each time Sofia would choose something to give to a family with children. She didn't yet fully understand what had happened there. But she sensed that place was magical, that their people helped each other. One afternoon, while Sofia was choosing a toy for a boy she had seen crying, she said something that moved Diego to tears. "Daddy, when I grow up I want to be like you and Mrs. Carmen. I want to help sad people become happy." Diego knelt to his daughter's height and hugged her tight. In that moment, he understood the most important lesson hadn't been professional success or financial security. It was having raised a girl who believed in human kindness, who saw helping others as the most natural thing in the world. 2 years later, when Sofia turned 6, they held her birthday party right there in the supermarket on Bravo Murillo Street. The owners had closed the store for an afternoon, allowing Diego to invite all the families Pay It Forward had helped in the Madrid area. Over 300 people attended, children running through empty aisles, parents sharing stories of rebirth, elderly people blessing Diego for changing their lives. Carmen arrived with a giant cake and a special gift for Sofia. A full university scholarship to use when she grew up, because girls who grow up seeing kindness in action become the women who change the world, she explained. The party transformed into something more than a birthday celebration. It became a moment of collective gratitude, a celebration of human resilience, a demonstration that solidarity isn't just a romantic idea but a concrete force that can transform a community. That night, as they cleaned up the confetti and party traces, Diego found a note left by a stranger at register number 3, the very one where it all began. "Thank you for proving miracles exist. My daughter has eaten for 6 months thanks to you. Now it's my turn to help someone else. The circle continues. Diego kept that note in his wallet next to the photo of Sofia and the first pay it forward receipt, 3 small pieces of paper that told the biggest story of his life. How despair had transformed into hope. How poverty had become richness. How a €3 gesture had changed thousands of lives. Today, Pay It Forward operates in 23 countries and has generated over €50 million in direct aid. Diego leads one of the world's most innovative social technology companies. Sofia studies at an international school, dreaming of becoming a pediatrician to help children. Carmen has won Social Entrepreneur of the Year 3 years running. But every evening at 9 p.m., the three of them still meet at that supermarket on Bravo Murillo Street, not out of nostalgia, but to continue what Carmen calls our daily duty of kindness. Because they have understood that miracles aren't extraordinary events that happen by chance, but ordinary gestures we choose to make every day. The lesson from that December afternoon has become a mantra Diego often repeats: kindness costs nothing, but it's worth everything. And when multiplied through technology and social commitment, it can truly change the world, one supermarket at a time, one family at a time, one child at a time. Because in the end, this is the most important story, not how a poor man became rich, but how a society became more human thanks to those who had the courage to reach out a hand when someone needed it. And how that gesture, multiplied infinitely, has proven that good is as contagious as evil, but far more powerful when given the chance to spread. Like if you believe kindness can change a life. Comment about a time someone helped you in a moment of need. Share to honor those who reach out without asking for anything in return. Subscribe for more stories of hope and second chances. Sometimes miracles come dressed as strangers in supermarkets. Sometimes €3 can be worth more than 3 million. And sometimes, when you help someone, you're saving yourself too.